Hello everyone, welcome to JCast Network. I'm your host, Herman. We're here at Occupy Wall Street, and as you can see behind me, we have a sukkah. Daniel Sieradski has developed Occupy Judaism, events for protesters to connect to their Judaism during the holidays. Let's take a closer look.
For example, our sukkah here is an act of civil disobedience. We don't have a permit. We put it up without permission. We put it up as a form of resistance against the rules of the park here that prohibit people from sleeping in tents. And so we were trying to leverage the sukkah as a way to help other people stay in shelter overnight so that they could be warm and, survive the cold. There's now sukkahs up in 11 different cities, and in Seattle, 10 people were arrested defending their sukkah, which was taken down by the Seattle Police Department. In addition to our efforts to support these protests, our greater goal in the long term is to try to build the momentum to turn these efforts back on Jewish institutions, because we need to occupy everywhere, not just where these occupations are taking place, but we need to occupy the institutions of our own lives. We need to occupy our own communities. We need to make our communities accountable and responsive to us. And just in the same way that we're trying to make Washington more accountable to us and make Wall Street more accountable, we need to make our Jewish institutions and our Jewish leaders more accountable and responsive to us as well.
So what does it mean to you to have a sukkah here?
It means that there's representation for the Jewish community, because we it's one thing to have a sukkah in like Union Square, and it's like, oh, this is nice, this is part of the holiday. But to have it here, specifically at the spot where there's so much happening and so much voice to a singular cause, it means that it's a statement beyond what was, what happened thousands of years ago. It's a statement for what is, what's going on right now. I mean, that's really interesting. There was a change that went on with a whole group of people that I, as part of the Jewish community, am part of. And that happened thousands of years ago. And now there's a change going on that I, as part of the American people, can relate to, and that's happening right here, right now. And I don't know, a sukkah actually is kind of like a house of change. Isn't that interesting? A sukkah always kind of turns up whenever things are about to change. Every year when the seasons start changing, when it goes from high holy days sort of back to sort of like the run-of-the-mill holidays, when the Jews received the Torah on Sinai from wandering the desert, like major changes happen after the sukkah started turning over. So I don't know. I'm kind of expecting like 10 new laws to pop out.
You never know.
You never know. Like, who knows? I mean, that's what we're all hoping for. We're hoping for amendments. We're hoping for, resolutions that'll change the way things are going.
I think it's very important that we have a sukkah here. When the Israelites left slavery and spent 40 years in the desert, the sukkah was the space in which the people were able to envision what it would be like to go from being a people that were slaves to being a free people. We remember Sukkot, on Sukkot we remember having left Egypt, and the Exodus, the redemption, was a paradigm shift. It was a time that we said that the way things were was not okay, and we have to change the society. It's also, Sukkot is a time in which all people are meant to share in the abundance together. There's a midrash in Vayikra Rabbah that says that it's a time when you all gather your food together. If one person is gathering his food into his home, you can't make a holiday. It has to be when the majority of the people are gathering their food. And we live in a time when our planet actually has an abundance of food. There's plenty for everybody to eat, but it's the system as it's set up and these man-made problems that result in widespread poverty and the inability of so many people to eat. So I think that there are so many messages of the holiday of Sukkot that are really relevant, and it's an opportunity to share in the wisdom of our tradition and have a voice in this movement.
You have so many different people around this area. What do people think about this sukkah?
It's been pretty incredible. There's been lots of people coming up all day, all night, wanting to learn about what a sukkah is, why we're here, what we're doing, what the symbols of the sukkah are, what it represents. And really the reaction has been very positive. With the exception of like a couple of emotionally disturbed people here
disrupting across the nation from Kol Nidre, service of over 1,000. What do you think is bringing those people out to these
Very often, our tradition professes a lot of, great social justice values, but people don't really have a way to embody those values in practice. Our synagogues are, community institutions. They talk a good talk, but they very rarely walk the walk. And so, in being out here in solidarity with these protesters, what we're doing is we're putting our faith in action. We're showing people that there's a way that you can embody the values of Judaism in a way that's consistent with our physical actions in the world, which means that we're actually going to really take a stand for those who are in need and not just pay lip service to it. So over here we have Yosef Goldman, who's a Jewish labor hero and organizer, secularist, but proud Jewish activist who helped organize Jewish workers in the earlier 20th century to rise up against injustice and to fight for their rights as workers to collectively bargain. Then we have Abraham Joshua Heschel marching with Martin Luther King for civil rights in the 1960s. This is the Orthodox anarchist symbol, which is my tag, but also a symbol about there being no authority in the world but the divine. This is the Occupy Judaism logo, which is based on the original poster for Occupy Wall Street. Instead of the ballerina balancing on top of the bull, we have the fiddler on the roof. This is one of the posters from the Israeli tent protests from over the summer, which are also protests for economic justice. This is the radical sukkah, and therefore a radical lulav. And this is a play on a Banksy image of him throwing a bouquet. I have him throwing open the Torah instead. The first sukkah, right? It was a pop-up sukkah. It was donated by a friend of mine, or it was donated by popupsukkah.com. It was hooked up by a friend of mine who works at Chabad, whatever. It was a really nice gift, but it was not durable for the weather. So we set it up. It lasted 2 days, but then it came crashing down in the rain, and so we got rid of it. That night we were hosting a Shabbat service, so we had a pup tent, which is like like a farmer's market tent that Jay Fridge brought and set up. And we said, look, this is a non-halachic structure, but we're not Orthodox Jews, and there's no reason why we should have to observe the letter of the law. We're going to set up this as our temporary structure to dwell in while we do our Shabbat service and our Shabbat dinner. The cops said, nope, it's not a kosher sukkah, take it down. They said, you have to be able to see through the top. So we said to the cops, like, what are you, crazy? You're not the Rabbanut. Where do you get off telling us what is and is not a kosher sukkah, or how Jews should observe their religion? They didn't have an answer.
What's the connection between the cops and the halachicness of the sukkah?
The cops are the ones who told us the sukkah was treif, that the pup tent wasn't kosher, that it couldn't stay standing because it was not a sukkah. By their definition of what a sukkah was. It's like your definition is an Orthodox definition.
So according to the cops,
according to the NYPD,
sukkah they won't take down.
Yeah, a real sukkah like this they're apparently not going to mess with, but a sukkah that is, in the spirit rather than the letter of the law, they would not allow to stay standing. Because we had been advising other people in the park, if you're a Jewish person, build for yourself a temporary structure and invite your friends to come and sleep in the structure with you, as is our custom. And the cops were like, that ain't flying. You're not telling people that they're going to use Sukkot as an excuse to build themselves tents and sleep here in the park. And so they forced this kid to take down his sukkah. I'm in a halachic sukkah, that's fine, like, that's how I observe the ritual. But like, anybody who identifies and who is not Orthodox should be able to follow the inyan of the mitzvah and not necessarily the letter of the law itself. But at the end of the day, the cops believe, nope, must be a halachic structure, otherwise it must come down, which is pretty ridiculous. In Seattle, they tried to do the same thing, to use the sukkah as a wedge to get people the ability to build structures that they could sleep in through the course of Sukkot, and the cops arrested 10 people who were blockading and defending a sukkah and tore the sukkah down on Yontif.
That does not surprise me in Seattle at all.
Yeah, well, Baruch Hashem, it didn't happen in New York because it would have been the end of Michael Bloomberg's career.
Wow. So then this is the fourth sukkah?
Well, so this is technically the second sukkah of Occupy Judaism, and the fourth sukkah launched here on this site.
Cool.
Second sukkah of Occupy Judaism? There's one in Boston?
No, of Occupy Judaism NYC. There's 12 sukkahs up right now all around the world at occupations. We have one in London, one in Toronto, and then 10 here in the US. We have 10 here in the US.
So what are your thoughts about the sukkah?
I love being in a sukkah at any time. And there's something very powerful about being in a sukkah in public space. And I think of this protest in a broad sense as being about playing out Jewish values in public space in this country. And I think in a broad sense, I think that most Americans and most American Jews think that we need an equitable society, think that there should be healthcare for all Americans, think that we should be renewing the infrastructure of this country, and think that the government in a broad sense should be responsive to that. And there is, even though I don't by any means agree with all of the things being said in the square I come out of the private sector, I don't personally in any way feel antithetical to markets in general or to Wall Street. I think there's something incredibly moving and powerful about seeing a really deep public conversation about the future of this country, and I hope in a deep sense that it's L'Shem Shamayim.
And you're sleeping in the sukkah.
And I'm sleeping here tonight, yes. Dan had put a thing up saying that they were looking for people to sleep in it, and I always used to sleep in my sukkah in Jerusalem, and I kind of like the idea in sleeping in a sukkah in Sukkot Park. So I came down here with my sleeping bag and my lulav and etrog, and I'm kind of excited to wake up here and daven shacharit in the morning.
As you can see, Occupy Judaism is an interesting initiative to bring Jews together. This is Herman, and thanks for watching.